The cargo container split open like a cracked egg, and chaos spilled out with it. Daniel Cross had been moving freight pallets when he heard the first screams. Not human screams, though plenty of those followed. This was something primal, something that made his spine tingle with ancient warning signals. He dropped the scanner he was holding and ran toward the commotion in Base 7, but what he found made him stop in his tracks, that a creature the size of a large bear cub stood in the center of a circle of terrified aliens. Its scales rippled with colors that shifted from deep purple to angry red. For eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on its head, darted frantically in all directions. A tail thick as a tree trunk whipped back and forth, already having smashed 3 cargo containers into twisted metal. The creature's mouth hung open, revealing rows of teeth that could probably bite through steel. "Get back! Everyone back!" A Trilaxian security officer waved her 3 arms frantically. Her blue skin had gone pale with fear. "It's a ravager, a juvenile ravager." The words sent a wave of panic through the crowd. Species from a dozen different worlds scrambled away from the creature. Daniel had heard of ravagers. Everyone had. They were apex predators from a planet in the outer spiral. Adults could take down armored vehicles. Their young were considered even more dangerous because they were unpredictable. "How did it get here?" someone shouted. "Smugglers probably," another voice answered. The container wasn't properly labeled. The cub let out another shriek. It was a sound of pure terror. Daniel watched as it backed into a corner, knocking over a fuel drum. The drum rolled away, clanging loudly, and the creature flinched at the noise. Its scales flashed bright yellow. Sedated. Use the neural disruptor. A tall Vornim with gray skin and far too many fingers pushed through the crowd. She wore the uniform of a certified xenobiologist. Medals covered her chest, probably one for every decade of experience. Point 2 security officers raised their weapons. The neural disruptor fired with a soft whine. The energy field surrounded the cub for a moment, then fizzled out. The creature's scales had somehow absorbed the charge. "Impossible," the Vornim whispered. "That should have worked." The cub charged forward. Aliens scattered in every direction. It didn't actually attack anyone, Daniel noticed. It was just trying to find a way out. But its panic made it dangerous. A swipe of its tail sent a Grellian merchant flying into a stack of crates. The merchant would live, but he wouldn't be walking right for a while. "We need to seal the bay." The Trilaxian security chief was screaming into her communicator. "Lockdown Protocol 7. Metal barriers began dropping from the ceiling at all the exits. The cub saw them coming down and panicked even more. It threw itself against a wall, leaving a dent in the reinforced metal. Blood appeared where its shoulder had made contact. "Stop! You're making it worse." Daniel surprised himself by shouting. Every alien in the bay turned to look at him. "Human, get out of here," the Vornim xenobiologist snapped. "This creature has killed trained handlers before. Juveniles are the most dangerous stage." "It's scared," Daniel said. He pushed through the crowd, getting closer to the barrier that had been set up around the cub. "Look at it. It's terrified." "Of course it's terrified," the xenobiologist said, "which makes it lethal. I have studied ravagers for 40 of your human years. There is no calming a panicked juvenile. The only option is containment until it exhausts itself." The cub slammed itself against another wall. More blood appeared. It was hurting itself in its desperation to escape. "How long will that take?" Daniel asked. "Hours. Days, perhaps, if it doesn't injure itself fatally first." Daniel looked at the creature, really looked at it, past the teeth and the scales and the reputation. What he saw was a terrified baby that had been ripped away from everything it knew and thrown into a nightmare of strange sounds, strange smells, and strange beings all screaming at it. He had seen that look before. In the eyes of a rescue dog he had fostered 2 years ago. A dog that had been abused and abandoned, that trusted nothing and no one. "Let me try something," Daniel said. The xenobiologist laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Let you try?" "Human, I have credentials from 6 different planetary academies. I have handled dangerous fauna on 23 worlds. If I cannot calm this creature, what makes you think you can?" "Maybe that's the problem," Daniel said quietly. He reached into his work jacket pocket. His fingers closed around the small package he had brought from Earth last month. He had been rationing them, making them last. Well, this seemed like a good use for them. "I'm going in," he said. "You'll be killed," the Trilaxian security chief said flatly. "I cannot allow it." "Then don't watch," Daniel said. He stepped over the barrier before anyone could stop him. The reaction was immediate. Every alien in the bay started shouting at once. Warnings, curses, predictions of his imminent death. The noise made the cub's head snap toward him. Those four eyes locked onto his body. Daniel held very still. The shouting continued behind him, but he ignored it. He kept his eyes on the creature, but not directly. A direct stare was a challenge. He had learned that from dogs. "Probably worked the same way here," the cub growled. It was a deep sound that Daniel felt in his chest. A sound designed by evolution to trigger fear in prey animals. And it worked. Every instinct Daniel had screamed at him to run, that he didn't run. Instead, he very slowly sat down on the floor, cross-legged, hands in his lap, making himself smaller, making himself less of a threat. The growling continued, but it sounded confused now. The cub took a step forward, then stopped. Its tail still whipped back and forth, but slower than before. Those four eyes studied him with obvious suspicion. Behind him, the xenobiologist was explaining in a clinical voice exactly how Daniel was about to die. Something about jaw pressure and vital organ placement. Daniel tuned her out. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brown chunk. Dried meat with teriyaki flavoring. A dog treat from Earth. His dog loved these things back home. The cub's nostrils flared. All four eyes focused on his hand. Daniel tossed the treat gently toward the creature. It landed about halfway between them. The cub sniffed the air, took one cautious step forward, then another. It lowered its massive head and sniffed the treat on the floor. The bay had gone completely silent. The creature's tongue, long and dark blue, extended from its mouth. It licked the treat once, then picked it up and swallowed it whole. Daniel waited 10 seconds, then tossed another treat. This one landed closer to him. The cub walked forward without hesitation this time. The second treat disappeared just as quickly as the first. The cub was now close enough that Daniel could smell it. An odd scent, like copper mixed with something floral. Its breath came in rapid pants, and he could see scratches and cuts all over its scales from where it had been throwing itself around. "Human, move away slowly," the Trilaxian security chief whispered from behind the barrier. Her voice carried a note of awe. "Whatever you are doing, it will not last. These creatures are unpredictable." Daniel didn't respond. The cub was staring at his hand, waiting for another treat. Its tail had stopped whipping. That had to be a good sign. He pulled out another piece and held it in his open palm, arm extended but not too far. Not threatening. The creature stretched its neck forward. Daniel could count every tooth in its mouth from this angle. One bite could take his arm off at the elbow. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his hand steadied as a long blue tongue emerged and delicately plucked the treat from his palm. The tongue was surprisingly warm. The cub chewed this time, seeming to savor the flavor. Then it sat down, just like a dog waiting for another command. "By the stars," someone whispered. "It's actually working." The Vornim xenobiologist pushed to the front of the crowd. Her many fingers were dancing across a tablet, recording everything. "This is impossible. Ravagers do not respond to food rewards when in a fear state. Their survival instincts override their hunger drive. I have documented this across 17 case studies." "Maybe your case studies were wrong," a human voice called from the crowd. Daniel recognized the accent. Australian. Probably Pete from the fuel division. "Science is not wrong," the xenobiologist snapped. "This human must be producing some kind of chemical signal. A pheromone that we cannot detect. Or perhaps humans have limited telepathic abilities that have gone undocumented." Daniel almost laughed at that. Telepathic, right? If he was telepathic, he would have known that Sarah from accounting was already dating someone before he asked her out last month. Would have saved him some embarrassment that he tossed another treat. The cub caught it in midair this time, snapping it up with reflexes that were genuinely frightening. But it wasn't aggression. It was just enthusiasm, like a golden retriever catching a tennis ball. "What is in those objects you are feeding it?" the xenobiologist demanded. Dog treats, Daniel said quietly. From Earth. Analyze them. The xenobiologist gestured frantically at her assistants. There must be some compound that affects Ravager neurochemistry. Some element from this death world that acts as a sedative. Two assistants rushed forward with scanners. They aimed them at the package in Daniel's jacket pocket. The devices beeped and whirred. After a moment, one of the assistants looked confused. It is just dried meat with basic flavoring compounds, the assistant reported. Sodium, simple sugars, protein structures. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should produce this effect. Scan again, the xenobiologist ordered. You must have missed something. Daniel slowly rose to his feet. The cub watched him but didn't react with fear. Its scales had shifted to a deep blue color. Calm, if you had to guess. He took one small step forward. The creature didn't move. Another step. Still nothing. He was now close enough to touch it. Do not do what you were thinking of doing, the Trilaxian security chief said. Please, human. One of my officers was killed by a Ravager 12 years ago. I watched it happen. They are not pets. I know, Daniel said, but he also knew scared animals. And this one was still trembling despite being calm. He could see it in the way its muscles tensed and relaxed. It was exhausted from panic, running on pure adrenaline. He held out another treat. The cub took it, then did something unexpected. It pressed its head against Daniel's chest, nearly knocking him over. The weight was enormous, easily over 200 pounds of pure muscle and bone. Daniel stood his ground and slowly, carefully, placed one hand on the creature's head. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. He scratched gently behind where he guessed its ears were. The cub made a sound he hadn't heard before, a deep rumbling purr that vibrated through his whole body. The bay erupted in shocked chatter. Someone contact the Ravager homeworld, the xenobiologist said, her voice shaking. They need to see this. They will never believe a recorded file. Already done, one of her assistants replied. They're demanding a live feed. They think we are lying. Daniel kept scratching. The cub's eyes, all four of them, slowly closed. It leaned more weight against him, and Daniel had to brace his legs to stay upright. But he didn't push it away. It needed this. Connection. Comfort. Proof that not everything in this strange place was dangerous. How long have you been training animals, human? The Vornim xenobiologist asked. She had crossed the barrier now, though she stayed a careful distance away. I haven't, Daniel said. I have 3 dogs back on Earth. But I'm not a professional trainer or anything. I just work freight. The xenobiologist blinked all 6 of her eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion in her species. 3 dogs. What are dogs? They're predators, actually, descended from wolves. But we domesticated them thousands of years ago. Now, they're companions. You domesticated predators. The xenobiologist said it like he had just claimed to breathe vacuum. Apex predators. You made them into companions. Well, yeah, they're good friends. Loyal. They love unconditionally, and they're always happy to see you. A human woman pushed through the crowd. Daniel recognized her as Dr. Rachel Kim, one of the few human scientists working on the station. She was grinning like someone who had just won the lottery. Do you realize what you just did? She asked Daniel. You treated a Ravager cub like a scared puppy, and it worked. Because that's exactly what it is. A puppy that weighs 200 pounds and has teeth like knives, Daniel said. The cub was now lying down at his feet, still purring. He sat down beside it and gave it another treat. Every species here has been trying to solve this problem with science, Dr. Kim said. They brought in experts and equipment and protocols. But you just use common sense and dog treats. She laughed. Earth is going to love this story. The Trilaxian security chief approached cautiously. The creature seems calm now, but we still need to transport it back to its homeworld. The question is how. Before, we could not get near it without triggering another panic response. Daniel looked down at the cub. It was breathing slowly now, deeply, almost asleep. I'll stay with it, he said, until we figure out the transport. That could be days, the security chief said. Then it's days. Daniel shrugged. I'm not leaving it alone. Not after this. The xenobiologist was still recording everything on her tablet. I need to understand this. You have no formal training in xenobiology. You have no credentials in animal behavior. You simply approached a creature that has terrified experts across multiple worlds, and you calmed it with food and gentle touch. And patience, Daniel added. That's the main thing. Patience and not being afraid. Not being afraid? The xenobiologist gestured at the cub with all her fingers at once. This is a creature that killed 2 handlers on its homeworld just last year. How can you not be afraid? Daniel thought about that. I guess I was afraid. But being afraid doesn't help. The cub can probably sense fear, and that makes it more scared too. So I just focused on what needed to be done. The cub shifted in its sleep, moving closer to Daniel's leg. One of its massive paws rested on his boot. 3 hours later, the cub was still asleep with its head in Daniel's lap. His legs had gone him 40 minutes ago, but he wasn't about to move. The bay had transformed into an impromptu research station. Scientists from 6 different species had set up equipment around them, all keeping a respectful distance. Cameras recorded every angle. Sensors measured everything from air composition to temperature fluctuations. Daniel was pretty sure none of them would find anything interesting. This wasn't science. It was just kindness. The transport ship from the Ravager homeworld will arrive in approximately 14 hours, the Trilaxian security chief announced. She had finally relaxed enough to stop gripping her weapon. They are sending specialists and the cub's family group. Family group? Daniel perked up at that. So, it has parents looking for it? Yes. 3 adults. They are extremely agitated, according to the communications officer. The message we received was mostly threats about what they would do to whoever harmed their young. Daniel looked down at the sleeping cub. Of course it had parents who loved it. Of course they were worried sick. He felt a pang of guilt, even though he hadn't been responsible for the kidnapping. Doctor Kim sat down next to him, careful not to disturb the cub. She had brought him a sandwich and a bottle of water. You need to eat. Station regulations say I have to make sure you don't pass out from low blood sugar while in the presence of a dangerous animal. Thanks. Daniel took the sandwich gratefully. He was starving. Calming down a monster apparently burned a lot of calories. The galactic news networks are going crazy over this, Dr. Kim said, pulling up a holoscreen. Look, you're trending on 17 different worlds. The screen showed a dozen different news headlines in various alien languages. The translation scroll beneath each one. Human uses unknown ability to calm apex predator. Mystery of Earth's animal control powers. Death world species demonstrates supernatural beast mastery. Supernatural? Daniel nearly choked on his sandwich. I gave a dog treats. They don't understand that, Dr. Kim explained. Most species in the galaxy never had to domesticate animals. They evolved past that need, or their planets didn't have animals dangerous enough to require it. The concept of taming wild creatures is completely foreign to them. The Vornum xenobiologist approached with her tablet. I have been reviewing Earth's biological history, she said without preamble. Your world is classified as a Class 4 death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather patterns, massive predators, deadly microorganisms. How did your species survive long enough to develop intelligence? We adapted, Daniel said simply. And we learned to work with the animals around us instead of just fighting them. Work with them, the xenobiologist repeated slowly. You formed partnerships with creatures that could kill you. Well, yeah, wolves helped us hunt. We helped them find food. Over time, they became dogs. Same thing happened with horses, cats, birds. We figured out that making friends was easier than making enemies. The xenobiologist's fingers danced across her tablet frantically. This explains so much. The psychological profile of humans makes more sense now. Your species has an instinctive ability to read and respond to nonverbal communication from other creatures. It is a survival adaptation. I guess so, Daniel said. He had never thought about it that deeply. To him, understanding what a scared animal needed was just obvious. You looked at their body language, listened to the sounds they made, and responded appropriately. Basic stuff. A commotion at the bay entrance made everyone turn. A group of officials in fancy robes was pushing through the crowd. The leader, a tall being with silver skin and way too many joints in its arms, strode forward with obvious authority. I am Administrator Quellen of the Galactic Animal Welfare Commission, the being announced. I have come to investigate this incident and determine what protocols were violated. The Trilaxian security chief stiffened. No protocols were violated. The situation was handled according to standard emergency procedures. Standard procedures do not involve allowing untrained civilians to approach Class A dangerous fauna, Administrator Quellen said coldly. This human could have been killed. The creature could have been further traumatized. This is a serious matter. Daniel felt anger flare in his chest. The creature was already traumatized. It was throwing itself against walls and bleeding. Your standard procedures were making things worse. Administrator Quellen's eyes narrowed. And you, a cargo worker with no credentials, decided you knew better than certified xenobiologists? I knew that what they were doing wasn't working, Daniel said. So I tried something else. Something else. The administrator gestured at the sleeping cub. You experimented on a juvenile member of a protected species without authorization. That is illegal under 17 different galactic statutes. He saved its life, Dr. Kim interjected, and possibly prevented injuries to dozens of station personnel. That remains to be seen, Administrator Quellen said. He turned to his assistants. Document everything. We will need detailed reports. The cub stirred in Daniel's lap. Its eyes opened, all four of them focusing immediately on Administrator Quellen. The scales rippled from blue to yellow. A warning color. Stay calm, Daniel murmured, placing a hand on the cub's head. It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you. The cub relaxed slightly, but kept watching the administrator with obvious distrust. Fascinating, the Vornim xenobiologist whispered. It responds to his voice even when in a heightened alert state. Administrator Quellen looked less impressed and more annoyed. I will need to interview you extensively, human. Your methods, while apparently effective, are not approved by any recognized authority. We cannot have civilians across the galaxy attempting to replicate this without proper oversight. Proper oversight didn't work, Dana pointed out. This cub was going to die or hurt someone. I stopped that from happening. Through luck, the administrator said dismissively. The next person who tries this will likely be killed. Or maybe, Dr. Kim said, standing up to face the administrator directly, the next person who tries this will be another human who actually understands animal behavior. Did you know that Earth has over 300 documented cases of animal domestication? 300 different species that we've formed partnerships with. And that's just in recorded history. Administrator Quellen blinked slowly. 300. 300, Dr. Kim repeated. While most of the galaxy was developing warp drives, humans were learning to read the emotional states of creatures that could eat them. It's a different kind of intelligence, but it's still intelligence. The administrator looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he turned back to Daniel. The transport ship carrying the cub's family will arrive soon. You will remain with the creature until then. Afterward, we will discuss your future involvement in galactic animal welfare matters. I'm just a freight worker, Daniel said. I don't want to be involved in anything official. Too late, the administrator said. You have already demonstrated abilities that the commission needs. Whether you want to be involved or not is no longer relevant. The cub growled softly at the administrator's tone. Daniel gave it another treat to distract it. We'll talk about this later, Daniel said firmly. Right now, I'm staying with this cub until its family arrives. Everything else can wait. Administrator Quellen looked like he wanted to press the issue, but thought better of it. The cub was now staring at him with all four eyes, and its tail had started twitching again. The administrator retreated to the other side of the bay. Doctor. Kim sat back down next to Daniel. You just made a very powerful enemy. Yeah, well, Daniel scratched behind the cub's ears again, earning another rumbling purr. I've got a very powerful friend now, too. The cub nuzzled against his chest, nearly knocking him over again. Somewhere in the crowd of observers, someone was recording everything. Daniel figured this footage would end up on every news network in the galaxy. Great. Just what he needed. Fame for doing something that seemed incredibly obvious. The transport ship arrived exactly on schedule. Daniel watched through the bay windows as the massive vessel docked with the station. It was bigger than he expected, built from dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Definitely a Ravager ship. Everything about it screamed predator. The cub had been awake for about an hour, and Daniel had been playing with it. Well, playing was probably too strong a word. He tossed treats, and the cub caught them. Sometimes it would pounce on the treat after he threw it, shaking it back and forth like it was prey. The scientists were recording everything, of course. They had been recording for the past 12 hours straight. The family group is approaching, the Trilaxian security chief announced. They requested that all weapons be holstered and that a clear path be maintained to the juvenile. Daniel stood up, his legs protesting after so many hours on the floor. The cub stood with him, pressing close to his side. It had barely left his presence since waking up. The door to the bay opened, and 3 adult Ravagers entered. They were massive, easily 3 times the size of the cub, with scales so dark they were almost black. Their eyes, 12 total among the 3 of them, locked onto the cub immediately. The lead adult, slightly larger than the other 2, made a sound that Daniel felt in his bones. Not a roar, something deeper, something that carried emotion. The cub responded with its own cry and started to run toward the adults. Then it stopped and looked back at Daniel. "It's okay," Daniel said softly. "Go to your family." The cub hesitated for another moment, then bounded toward the adults. They surrounded it immediately, checking it over with their massive heads and making gentle rumbling sounds. It was a reunion that transcended species. Daniel felt his throat tighten watching it. Then the lead adult looked at him. The weight of that gaze was incredible. This was a creature that had probably killed things much more dangerous than a human. Its teeth were as long as Daniel's forearm. One swipe of its claws could tear through the station's hull, and it was walking toward him. Every instinct screamed at Daniel to run. He stayed where he was. The Ravager stopped about 10 feet away. Its eyes studied him with obvious intelligence. Then it lowered its head, bringing its face close to Daniel's level. It sniffed him carefully, taking in his scent. Daniel could smell it too. That same copper and floral mix, but stronger. More complex. The creature made a soft sound, almost questioning. "I just gave it some treats," Daniel said, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would convey meaning. It was scared. "I wanted to help." The Ravager's scales rippled through several colors. Then it did something that made every scientist in the bay gasp. It pressed its massive head against Daniel's chest, gently, in exactly the same gesture the cub had used. Daniel reached up and placed both hands on the creature's head. The scales were cooler than the cub's, harder, but still strangely smooth. He scratched gently, and the Ravager's eyes closed. By the ancients, the Vornum xenobiologist breathed. An adult, a fully mature adult Ravager, is allowing a human to touch it. The other 2 adults approached as well. One sniffed Daniel's hands, the other examined the empty treat bag he had dropped on the floor. The cub was bouncing between all of them, making excited sounds. Daniel pulled out his last few treats. He offered one to the lead adult. The creature sniffed it, then delicately took it from his palm. It chewed thoughtfully, then made a sound that might have been approval. "I need more dog treats," Daniel called out to Dr. Kim. "Like a lot more." She was already on her communicator. "I'm ordering every package available on the station. Earth foods are expensive out here, but I don't think anyone's going to complain about the budget right now." Administrator Quellen pushed forward through the crowd. "This is unprecedented. We need to understand what is happening here. Human, you will need to undergo extensive testing. We must determine if this is a species-wide ability or something unique to you." "It's not unique to me," Daniel said, still standing among the 4 Ravagers. "Any human who grew up around animals could probably do this." "Impossible," one of the administrator's assistants said. "The statistical probability of an entire species having this level of innate ability is about 100% when the species evolved on a death world," Dr. Kim interrupted. "Earth wasn't kind to humans. We had to learn to read animals or die. It's that simple." A human man Daniel didn't recognize stepped forward from the crowd. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and confident eyes. "Daniel, right? I'm Frank Liu. I run the hydroponics bay. Before this job, I trained rescue dogs for 20 years. Mind if I try?" "Sure," Daniel said. Just move slowly. Frank approached with the kind of calm confidence that comes from experience. He held out his hand, palm down, letting the nearest adult ravager sniff him. The creature examined him for a long moment, then allowed Frank to touch its side. "Good boy," Frank said automatically. "Or girl. Not sure about the biology here." The ravager made a pleased sound. Another human emerged from the crowd. A young woman with bright pink hair. "I worked at a zoo on Earth. Can I try?" Within minutes, 5 different humans were interacting with the ravagers. Not all of them were completely comfortable, but all of them managed to establish some kind of connection. The adult ravagers seemed curious about these strange beings who didn't fear them. The alien scientists were frantically recording everything. Administrator Quellen looked like he was having some kind of existential crisis. "This changes everything," the Vornum xenobiologist said. "If humans can do this with ravagers, what else can they do? What other species considered too dangerous to approach might respond to human contact? We have a facility on Rigel 6, one of Administrator Quellen's assistants said, reading from a tablet. 3 creatures scheduled for euthanasia because they are too aggressive for standard handling. Perhaps we could request human assistance." "I'm not killing anything," Daniel said firmly. The lead ravager seemed to sense his mood shift and moved closer to him protectively. No, the assistant said quickly. "I mean, we could request human assistance to save them, to prevent the euthanasia by using these methods to calm them." Daniel looked at the ravagers around him, at the cub, which was now playing with another human's shoelaces, at the adults, who were watching the humans with interest rather than aggression. He thought about 3 creatures in a facility somewhere, scheduled to die because nobody knew how to reach them. "All right," he said, "I'll help, but I need some things." "Name them," Administrator Quellen said. He had apparently moved past his crisis and into practical mode. "First, I need more treats. A variety. Different flavors, different textures. Second, I need information about these creatures. Not scientific reports. Practical stuff. What do they eat? What frightens them? What makes them happy? Third, I need time. This isn't something you rush." "Agreed," the administrator said. "But I must ask, what do you want in return? Payment? Status? A position with the commission?" Daniel thought about that. He thought about his small apartment and his boring freight job. Then he thought about the look in the cub's eyes when it first approached him. The trust it had shown. "I want to know that these creatures are safe," he said. "That's all. I don't need money or fancy titles. I just want to help." The administrator studied him for a long moment. "You are either the most noble being I have ever met, or the most foolish." "Probably both," Dr. Kim said with a grin. The lead ravager made a sound that might have been laughter. Or maybe Daniel was just imagining that. Either way, the creature seemed pleased with the conversation's direction. "We should prepare for transport," the Trilaxian security chief said. "The ravager family will want to return home soon." Daniel looked at the cub one last time. It bounded over to him and pressed its head against his chest again. He scratched behind its ears. "You be good, okay? Listen to your parents." The cub made a soft sound, then licked his face with that long blue tongue. It was gross and perfect at the same time. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood outside a reinforced containment facility on Rigel 6. The planet was cold, with purple vegetation and air that smelled like mint. He wore a breathing mask, but otherwise felt fine. Earth gravity was heavier than this, so moving around was easy. Administrator Quellen stood beside him, looking nervous. The first creature is a spine wolf from Craven Prime. High-gravity world, extremely aggressive temperament. It has injured 4 handlers in the past 6 months. What happened to it? Daniel asked. Why is it so aggressive? Unknown. It was found in a crashed ship and brought here for rehabilitation. But it refuses all contact. The decision was made to terminate it tomorrow. Daniel looked through the observation window. The creature looked like a wolf mixed with a porcupine. Gray fur covered its body, but its back and tail were lined with quills that looked sharp enough to pierce armor. It paced in the corner of its enclosure, head low, eyes wild. "It's terrified," Daniel said. "It is dangerous," Administrator Quellen corrected. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." Daniel opened his bag and pulled out several packages. He had spent the past 2 weeks preparing. Different treats from Earth, different textures and flavors. Beef, chicken, fish, vegetarian options. He also had toys. A rope, some balls, even a squeaky toy that had cost him 3 weeks' salary after shipping costs. "I'm going in," Daniel announced. The facility staff looked at Administrator Quellen, who sighed and nodded. "Clear the area. Prepare medical teams. Record everything." Daniel entered the enclosure through the airlock. The spine wolf's head snapped toward him immediately. The quills on its back rose, standing straight up. It growled, a sound that echoed off the walls. Daniel sat down on the floor and waited. The wolf watched him with suspicious eyes. Minutes passed. Daniel didn't move. He kept his breathing slow and steady. Just like with dogs back home. Let them come to you. Don't force it. After 10 minutes, the wolf took one step forward. Then another. Daniel pulled out a treat and tossed it gently. The treat landed between them. The wolf sniffed the air, then approached cautiously. It sniffed the treat, picked it up, and swallowed it. Daniel tossed another one. The wolf took it faster this time. Outside the enclosure, the staff watched in silence. Dr. Kim had come along for this trip. She was recording everything, providing commentary for the scientists watching remotely. Subject is responding to positive reinforcement. Stress indicators decreasing. Daniel is maintaining non-threatening posture. An hour later, Daniel was scratching behind the spine wolf's ears while it made a rumbling sound similar to a purr. The quills had lowered. The wild look in its eyes had faded. "Impossible," one of the facility handlers whispered. "We tried food rewards. They did not work." "You tried while the animal was stressed," Daniel said. He could hear them through the intercom system. "You have to wait until they're calm enough to accept food. Fear overrides hunger." The spine wolf rolled onto its back, exposing its belly. Daniel rubbed the soft fur there, careful to avoid the quills. The wolf's leg kicked involuntarily, just like a dog. "The second creature is ready," Administrator Quellen said through the intercom. Daniel spent 3 more hours with the spine wolf, establishing trust, teaching it that this place was safe. By the end, it was playing fetch with a ball. The facility staff looked like they were watching magic happen. The second creature was the void serpent. It looked like a snake, but with 6 legs and bioluminescent scales that glowed in patterns. It was coiled in the corner of its enclosure, hissing at anyone who approached the observation window. "This one is scheduled for termination in 2 days," Administrator Quellen explained. "It has been deemed impossible to handle safely. Several staff members have been poisoned by its venom." "Why is it here?" Daniel asked. "It was being transported to a zoo when the ship experienced a malfunction. The stress of the accident seems to have made it extremely aggressive." Daniel studied the creature. Its patterns were beautiful, shifting through colors that probably didn't have names in English. But its eyes held the same fear he had seen in the Ravager cub and the spine wolf that he entered the enclosure with a different approach this time. Snakes, even Earth snakes, were different from mammals. He moved slowly, deliberately. He didn't try to touch it. He just sat and waited, offering food at intervals. Fish treats this time, which he had brought specifically for this creature. The void serpent watched him with obvious suspicion. Its patterns flickered rapidly. Warning colors, probably. Daniel ignored the warnings and stayed calm. He hummed softly, a tune his mother used to sing. Something about the vibrations seemed to interest the serpent. Its patterns slowed, days blurred together. Daniel worked with the void serpent in the mornings, the spine wolf in the afternoons. He slept in a facility guest room and ate meals that were shipped from Earth at enormous expense. Administrator Quellen observed everything, taking notes, asking questions. On the 5th day, the void serpent allowed Daniel to touch its scales. On the 6th day, it coiled around his arm voluntarily. Not aggressive, just contact, connection. "You have saved 2 creatures that were considered lost cases," Administrator Quellen said. "The galaxy is watching. Your methods are being studied by every major institution." "It's not methods," Daniel said, tired of explaining this. "It's just patience and kindness. Those are methods," the administrator countered, "and they're methods that most species have forgotten or never learned." The third creature was waiting. Daniel could see it through another observation window. A juvenile Titan beetle, as large as a small car. Its mandibles could crush steel. Its shell had dents and scratches from throwing itself against the walls. This one was bred in captivity, Administrator Quellen said quietly. It should have been docile, but something went wrong. It attacked its handlers during feeding. 3 of them are still recovering. The decision was made to terminate it next week. Daniel looked at the beetle, at the way it moved in circles, repeating the same pattern over and over. He had seen that behavior before, in dogs that had been kept in cages too small, in animals that had been neglected or abused. How long has it been in that enclosure? Daniel asked. 6 months. How big is its natural territory? Administrator Quellen consulted his tablet. Approximately 50 square kilometers, and you kept it in a room the size of a gymnasium for 6 months. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. No wonder it's aggressive. It's going insane. We have limited space, one of the facility staff said defensively. Then you shouldn't have tried to keep it, Daniel snapped. This isn't about saving it now. This is about fixing the damage you caused. The staff member looked away, ashamed. Daniel took a breath, calming himself. Anger wouldn't help. He entered the enclosure, carrying his bag of supplies. The beetle's massive head turned toward him. Its mandibles opened and closed. Threatening. Daniel sat down and began to wait. This would take time, possibly weeks. The beetle was more damaged than the others had been, but he would try. That's what he did now, apparently. He tried to fix the problems that others had created through ignorance or carelessness that a week later, the beetle was eating from Daniel's hand. 2 weeks later, it allowed him to climb onto its back. The facility staff had built a larger enclosure, one that was still too small but better than before. Plans were being made to release it into a protected wilderness area. Administrator Quellen approached Daniel on the final day. I have a proposal. The commission wants to create a new position, head of predator relations. The salary would be substantial. You would travel the galaxy, working with creatures that others have given up on. Daniel thought about his apartment on the station, his boring freight job, his simple life. Then he thought about the Ravager cub's eyes, the spine wolf's grateful purr, the void serpent's gentle coiling, the titan beetle's joy when it finally had space to move. I'll do it, Daniel said. On one condition. Name it. I want to hire other humans. People who understand animals. We train them, we work as a team. This isn't about me being special. It's about humans having skills that the galaxy needs. Administrator Quellen smiled. It was the first time Daniel had seen the being smile. Agreed. We will create a training program. Humans will teach other species these techniques. Your methods will spread throughout the galaxy. They're not my methods, Daniel said for what felt like the 1000th time. They're just common sense. Common sense that was forged on a world where predators ruled, the administrator said. Earth taught your species well. 6 months had changed everything. Daniel walked through the new training facility on Luna Station, watching a class of 20 students from 15 different species. They were practicing approach techniques with holographic animals. Not perfect, but better than risking real creatures during the learning process. Remember, said the human instructor, a woman named Angela Roberts who had spent 20 years working with wildlife in Africa, you are not trying to dominate. You're trying to communicate. Big difference. A Grellian student raised 3 of his hands. But my species has no history with predators. We evolved on a world where we were the dominant life form. How can I learn what humans know instinctively? It's not instinct, Angela corrected gently. It's learned behavior. Yes, humans had thousands of years to develop these skills, but you can learn the basics in months. Watch body language. Listen to vocalizations. Respond with patience instead of fear. Anyone can learn this. Daniel smiled and moved on. The facility now had 12 full-time human instructors and over 100 students enrolled. Demand had exceeded all projections. Species from across the galaxy wanted to learn these techniques. His communicator buzzed. Dr. Kim's face appeared on the screen. Daniel, we have a situation. Class 5 emergency on orbital platform 17. A transport ship carrying exotic animals crashed during docking. Multiple creatures loose on the station. They're calling for you specifically. I'm on my way, Daniel said. Send the details to my ship. 20 minutes later, He was aboard a fast courier heading toward Platform 17. Frank Liu and two other human specialists came with him. They had become a team over the past months, responding to emergencies across the sector. What are we dealing with? Frank asked, reading the reports on his tablet. Mixed cargo, Daniel said. Looks like 6 different species. 2 are considered highly dangerous. One is a juvenile pack predator from Deneb 4. The other is some kind of amphibious creature from a water world. Both are injured and scared. The platform appeared ahead of them. Massive and circular, it rotated slowly to generate artificial gravity. Docking lights flashed in emergency patterns. They were met by the platform's security chief, a Trilaxian who looked exhausted. Thank the stars you are here. We have contained most of the creatures, but the predator and the amphibian are in the lower cargo sections. We cannot risk sending our people in. Both creatures have already injured 3 workers. Show me, Daniel said. The cargo section was a disaster. Crates had been smashed open. Water from broken tanks flooded the floor. The juvenile pack predator, roughly the size of a large dog, crouched on top of a shipping container. Its fur stood on end, and it made rapid clicking sounds. Fear sounds. It is alone, the security chief explained. Pack predators are never alone in nature. The isolation is making it panic. Daniel nodded. Frank, you take the predator. Use the techniques we developed for social species. I'll handle the amphibian. Frank moved forward with calm confidence, carrying treats and a small recording device that played sounds of the creature's own species. Pack predators needed social connection. The recording would help. Daniel splashed through the water toward where the amphibian had been spotted. He found it wedged between 2 containers, trembling. The creature was beautiful. Scales that shifted between blue and green, gills that fluttered rapidly, eyes that looked far too human despite being on an alien face that IT hissed when it saw Daniel, showing small sharp teeth. But the hiss sounded weak. The creature was dying. The air was too dry, and its gills were struggling. I know, Daniel said softly, even though it couldn't understand him. I know it hurts. Let me help. He pulled out a container of water from his pack and poured it over the creature's gills. The relief was immediate. The trembling slowed. Daniel poured more water, then offered food. The creature watched him with suspicious eyes, but took the food. A small piece of synthesized protein that smelled like fish. Behind him, Frank was making progress with the pack predator. The recording had calmed it enough to approach. The creature was now eating treats and allowing Frank to check its injuries. We need a water tank, Daniel called out. Big enough for the amphibian. And we need it fast. The platform staff scrambled to comply. Within an hour, both creatures were safe. The pack predator was in a temporary enclosure with recordings of its species playing continuously. The amphibian was in a proper water tank, its gills working normally again. Administrator Quellen arrived as they were finishing up. He had become a regular presence at these emergencies, documenting everything for the commission. 2 more lives saved, he said. The galaxy owes your species a debt, Daniel Cross. The galaxy owes us nothing, Daniel said, tired but satisfied. We're just doing what's right. Nevertheless, the administrator pulled up a holographic display. I want to show you something. This is a map of reported incidents involving dangerous fauna over the past year. The display showed hundreds of red dots across the galaxy. Each represented a creature that had been deemed too dangerous to handle, scheduled for euthanasia, or already terminated. Now watch, the administrator said. The display changed. Blue dots began appearing, replacing many of the red ones. These are cases where human intervention saved the creature. In 6 months, you and your teams have saved over 300 animals that would have been killed. Daniel stared at the display. 300. He had known they were making a difference, but seeing it visualized like this hit differently. There is more, Administrator Quellen continued. Other species are beginning to adopt these techniques. The Vornim xenobiologists have completely revised their training programs. The Trilaxian security forces now include animal behavioral specialists in their ranks. You have started a revolution in how the galaxy treats its creatures. It's not a revolution, Daniel protested. It's just common sense. Common sense that was forged on a death world, the administrator said. Earth taught humans to coexist with predators, to see them not as monsters, but as beings with needs and fears. The rest of the galaxy never learned that lesson. We simply avoided dangerous creatures or eliminated them. Frank walked over, the pack predator following him like a puppy. It had bonded quickly. Pack predators needed companionship, and Frank had provided it. "We got a new request," Frank said. "A colony world in the Outer Rim. They have a native species that's been raiding their settlements. The colonists want to exterminate them, but the Galactic Wildlife Protection League is asking if we can find another solution." "Of course we can," Daniel said. "There's always another solution." They left the platform 3 hours later, after ensuring both rescued creatures would receive proper care. The transport ship back to Luna Station was quiet. Daniel looked out the window at the stars and thought about how much had changed that a year ago. He had been a freight worker with no plans beyond his next shift. Now, he was traveling the galaxy, teaching other species how to show compassion to creatures they feared. It was exhausting work, but it was also the most rewarding thing he had ever done. His communicator buzzed again. A message from the Ravager homeworld. The cub, which apparently had been given a name that translated roughly to Brave Heart, was doing well. It had grown significantly and was learning to hunt with its family. The message included a video. Daniel played it. The cub, now significantly larger, was playing with its siblings. Then it looked directly at the camera and made a sound. A happy sound. Then went back to playing. "You keeping in touch with them?" Frank asked, looking over his shoulder. "Yeah, the family sends updates every few weeks." Daniel smiled. They wanted to visit sometime, meet the rest of their clan. A human visiting a Ravager clan. A year ago, that would have been suicidal. A year ago, a lot of things were different. The ship docked at Luna Station. Daniel headed back to his quarters, but stopped when he saw a crowd gathered near the training facility. Students and instructors, both human and alien, were clustered around something. He pushed through the crowd and found Angela leading a demonstration. She was working with a creature he didn't recognize. Something small and furry with too many legs. It looked nervous, but Angela's calm presence was clearly helping. "The key," Angela was saying to the assembled students, "is to never assume you know what the creature needs. Every species is different. Every individual is different. You have to observe, adapt, and respond. There is no universal solution." A student asked a question in a language Daniel didn't understand. The translator rendered it. "But humans seem to succeed where we fail." What? Angela thought about that. Because Earth was a hard teacher. We learn these lessons through necessity. But that doesn't mean you can't learn them too. It just takes practice and patience. Daniel walked away, leaving them to their lesson. He reached his quarters and collapsed on the bed. 6 months of constant travel, constant emergencies, constant teaching. He was exhausted, but he was also happy. His communicator buzzed one more time. This message was from Administrator Quellen. "New facility opening next month. Mars Station will be the largest animal behavioral training center in the galaxy. They want you to speak at the opening ceremony. Your choice of topic." Daniel typed back, "I'll talk about dog treats." The administrator's response came quickly. "The galaxy needs to hear about more than dog treats. The galaxy needs to understand that complex problems sometimes have simple solutions," Daniel replied. "Dog treats are as good an example as any." He set the communicator aside and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would be teaching another class. Next week he would be responding to another emergency. But tonight he would rest. Somewhere on a Ravager homeworld, a cub that should have died was playing with its family. Somewhere on Rigel 6, a spine wolf that should have been terminated was living in a protected sanctuary. Somewhere across the galaxy, creatures that had been labeled as dangerous and unsalvageable were being given second chances. All because a freight worker had carried dog treats in his pocket and decided to see a scared cub instead of a monster. The galaxy had learned that humans could calm beasts. But the real lesson was simpler. Kindness worked. Patience worked. Understanding worked. These weren't human traits. They were choices that any being could make. Earth had just forced humans to learn that lesson earlier than most. And now, finally, the rest of the galaxy was catching up.